Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Wednesday, the 4th of December. It is match day as Rangers face Kilmarnock at Ibrox this evening. But to discuss all things about that, who's likely to line up, the B team last night, and the latest news with regards to the chairman and the search for a new one, then Joshua Barry joins us. How's it going, Joshua? Can Joshua hear me there? Calling Joshua. Can Joshua... It looks like we may have lost Joshua there. Let us know in the comments, folks, if you can hear me. Joshua's getting a circle of doom I can see there. So hopefully we can get Joshua back as soon as possible. But we'll crack on regardless anyway. Hopefully you're all doing well. Let's kick off the news with off-field stuff, of course. You would have seen last night, Chris, with the news about the chairman search. Was expected that Conservative peer Malcolm Offord was set to replace John Gilligan as the next chairman of Rangers, but that has stalled. The talks have stalled. We reported last month, of course, that he was in line to replace John Bennett as chairman, taking over John Gilligan, who was in interim charge. Bennett, of course, stepped down from the top table in September. Health reasons cited for his departure. Gilligan stepped up, but the search, as he said, was on to find a permanent replacement. But those talks said to have now stalled. I'm delighted to say we've got Joshua back. How's it going, Joshua?
Here I am. Don't know if it was your issue or my issue, but yes, nice to be here, etc., etc. And lots to discuss, isn't there? B team game, the chairman situation, and the small matter of the big game at Ibrox tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just speaking there about the talk stalling with regards to Malcolm Offord taking over as Rangers chairman. Discussed it that Chris broke the news last night. Caught me by surprise, I've got to admit, Joshua. I thought this was pretty much a done deal, if you like. I know Patrick Stewart's coming in as CEO. He starts his new job on the 16th of December, but it now looks unlikely that Malcolm Offord will be joining him.
Yeah, so I think Chris obviously broke the news last night we had on the website, and I think the first thing to say, is it's not totally done out of the question, severed, but it is at this moment in time unlikely. There's a few different circumstances to this, Derek. The first one is that I think getting a CEO in had to be the priority for Rangers, and before a chairman. Within this overall discussion of a chairman and a CEO and who runs things, and you've got to remember that largely the person who has been the Rangers chairman for a long time has been someone with a stake in the club, and they've been the predominant voice, whether that be Douglas Park or Dave King or John Bennett. The fact that there is the chairman role now is going to slightly change, not least because it's outsourced, but because, again, as Chris reported a couple of weeks ago, Derek, when we broke the news of Patrick Stewart's appointment as CEO, that CEO role is going to have the sufficient kind of overarching responsibility that it needs for it to be successful. We've seen, I think it's fair to say, with decisions that have been made and especially logistical decisions at the top run in a football club, when that role has fallen to the chairman and he's been the final decision maker, Rangers are in the situation they're in, partly a large part as a consequence of that. I think you need to, there's enough evidence to show that Rangers have needed to outsource that responsibility for who has the final say, who makes decisions, like do we have a director of football, who is the person that has responsibility over the manager, how do we implement a long-term football strategy as opposed to just going from manager to manager and jumping from idea to idea. So I think that's an important detail to remember in the discussion. If Malcolm Offord had, or the small chance that he still would become the Rangers chairman, it would still be Patrick Stewart that does have the final say on decisions that relate to, in particular, the football side of the business. So as I say, it's not totally dead and could not happen, but as we understand it, the talks at this moment in time have stalled and look more unlikely than it did a few days ago. And Rangers have been speaking to other people as well about the chairman position. Ideally, they'd like to have someone in place around December time. The fact that they have that CEO, Patrick Stewart, who will officially start on December 16th, that I think had to be the priority though, because as I mentioned, Rangers have needed, in my opinion, certainly a CEO who can run a football club really successfully, a little bit more than a chairman who will still have an important role, but it will be less hands-on than perhaps that role has been in the past, Eric.
It doesn't reflect well on the club, I don't think, this news coming out. If someone knocks you back, I don't think it does the club any good PR-wise. Like you say, it's not done and dusted, but it certainly looks unlikely. It appears, like you say, Joshua, the CEO will have the main say on all matters at Rangers. I wonder if they're need to bring in someone that's just there as a chairman and quite happy with that sort of power being shifted to the CEO, as opposed to having more say in the running of the club. But a few comments coming in off the back of it. Matthew Ross says, what's the rough average time it takes clubs to replace their chairman? Are we outliers? I've not looked into this in detail, Matthew, but I'd imagine, and me myself personally, I would have thought that Rangers would have had someone lined up by now. I know John Gilligan's there in an interim basis, but he doesn't want to be there long term. So let's hope it gets sorted soon. Denzo with a point as well. I've seen this mentioned last night as well. Why we're releasing these names into the public domain before they have signed up properly makes us look absolutely amateurish. So a few comments like that I've seen last night. And Bluebells are blue with the point. The chairman is nowhere near as important as the CEO. We need to cam it with that appointment. It can wait for the right person. I think the CEO very much necessary. And again, I would like to have seen that appointment made before now. Would have liked to have seen Patrick Stewart start his job before the 16th of December. But it's done now, and let's hope, I'm sure we'll hear from him soon as well when he takes up that role that is aims for the club as well. But I think the CEO one was absolutely paramount. But certainly, with regards to the chairman, those talks have stalled, folks. Malcolm Offord looks unlikely to join Rangers now. You can read more about that, incidentally, over on the website. Go and check it out. Moving on to on-pitch matters, Joshua. We'll talk about the game tonight shortly, but you were at the team game last night in which David McCallum's young side were eliminated from the SPFL Trust Trophy by Championship outfit Queen's Park. You were at the old City Stadium, Lower Hampden, for those of a certain vintage. But what was it like?
Do you know what? They were actually really good, or pretty good up until 35 minutes in, and that's certainly what David McCallum was, I think, a bit frustrated last night. Understandably, the game totally pivoted on Clinton and Ciala getting sent off. Now, before everyone asks what happened, no one really knew, because obviously the game wasn't being streamed live, and it looked like an off-ball incident because the ball had gone by the time that the referee turned around and showed Ciala the red card. Dave McCallum said that he apologised to his team in the training, what's it called, dressing room, after the game as well. And it must be said, he kind of went down, he took his red card without much complaint, which suggests he maybe did deserve it for what seemed to be some sort of off-ball incident. And Ciala, like the rest of the team, had started well. Queen's Park had a relatively young team out as well, Derek, because they are competing across a number of fronts as well. Played 120 minutes at the weekend. Rangers hit the post after they went 1-up through Cole McKinnon. Bailey Rice, Finlay Curtis really stood out early on. Archie Stevens did well. 2 in the lead up to the goal. It was a cross from Paul and Seal onto the head of Cole McKinnon, one of a number of players who's been involved in the first team who was playing last night. Robbie Fraser then, your favourite Rangers left back, hit the post with what would have been an unbelievable effort. And Rangers kind of had the majority of the chances. Mason Munn was pretty good in goal, started a couple of quick transitions. Chris Eady had a one-on-one after Finlay Curtis had created that, following a throw from the keeper, I think defending a corner as well. From that moment in time, the game really pivoted. 35 minutes in, Rangers go down to 10 men. Up until half-time, they kept it till 0-0. And coming into the second half, Derek, you're kind of thinking, well, if they can get it to 55 minutes or 60, because they had that pace at the top end of the pitch, it wasn't without they could have still nicked another goal that hadn't necessarily swung by that point. But I think Queen's Park showed their experience. Two quick goals after the break, both kind of similar in their origins, and then a kind of comical own goal for the third for Rangers. So they'll be frustrated because they'll think had the game stayed 11 versus 11, they'd have won and they'd have went through. Definitely a few players you're looking at in there thinking they shouldn't be far away from more first team minutes. Refreshing to watch a Rangers team playing in that kind of 4-2-3-1 shape, who had out-and-out wingers on either side, and obviously particular attention is on the likes of Curtis at the moment because of his goal-scoring numbers for the B team. Bailey Rice we know all about, Robbie Fraser, Nsiala, who I thought actually did pretty well for the first 35 minutes alongside Christian Webster until he was sent off. So a frustrating result in the end, but very much a game that pivoted on that dismissal.
Yeah, a few comments come in just off the back of that. Dickie says, "Did you still want Nsiala to get first team chances?" Famously said he should start at Tynecastle on opening day of the season. I stand by that.
Yeah.
Listen, I think many, like we said yesterday, I was expecting to see a wee bit of him at least in the first team, but it's clearly obvious that the management team don't rate him ready to play first team matches. Gordon Bond with a point. I heard Bailey Rice and Curtis with the highlights. Will they start to get more involved in the first team? Got to say, I was pleased to see Bailey Rice come off the bench last Thursday night, Joshua. Yeah. It was a funny one. I went to the toilet, came back, and then I seen a big guy in midfield. I was couldn't believe my eyes that Bailey Rice was on the park. I had to ask somebody to begin with, but great to see him getting his chance against Nice. Finlay Curtis is another one that's certainly pulling up trees at this moment in time. We'd like to see these young lads getting more action than they are at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, if we take Rice first and foremost, I think that appearance against Nice was his first appearance since he came on against Real Betis, which was just before he signed that long-term contract, still when Michael Beale was at the club. Could be wrong. As we've discussed a little bit over the last couple of weeks, Derek, within the discussion rightly about how exciting Lennon Miller is and has been as a player, it's also gone under the radar somewhat that he's had a pathway to play in. Rice has had some injuries, and that should be mentioned, but also I think all the things we've discussed over the last number of months, when you lose academy heads, when you change style in the first team with the manager and what they demand in certain positions, when there's so much uncertainty at clubs, things like academy pathways get disrupted and don't flow as easily as they should be. There's no doubt in my mind that Rice should have played more minutes. Again, injuries have limited that to a degree, so it's important to mention that. But he needs. I don't think there's value in him. For example, I think he's just turned 18, Derek. I don't think there's value in him staying in the B team for the entirety of this season. Now, Rangers play a number 6. Their midfield has changed a little bit, so there's more bodies around the number 6, because I think if you're looking at what Rice's weaknesses are, he doesn't have the engine of, say, Nico Raskin, who is able to cover huge areas in that number 6 position. Clement's football's a bit more transitional. I think it's less suited to a ball-playing number 6, and you see that with the fact that he wanted Lundstrom in there for a long time because of what he could offer him in that position. But you can't, I don't think, afford, if you are serious about youth pathway. And yes, Rangers are limited by the B team situation that we know really well. The fact that he can't play in, say, the second or third division, which would make the level like they were playing at last night probably more applicable to play where the players are as opposed to the Lowland League, which kind of served its purpose. But those games are few and far between. The best v best program, which might be playing against other good academy players, but they're also glorified friendlies because they're not like last night, the opportunity to get into the semi-final of a cup competition in men's football. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Rice. Like you, I was surprised to see him come on against Nice. Arguably, maybe European football suits him a little bit more because he will have the time on the ball, and it's not as much about isolating physicality and isolating running. But I don't think that could be lost in the discussion about Lennon Miller. The fact that Rice was very much on a par with him as they were coming through the Motherwell Academy, probably still is. What players I think of that ability need is football, that the pathway into the first team, and the opportunity to play in their favourite position. And Rangers at number 6 don't have an abundance of options. I think Connor Barron is better higher up the pitch. Nico Raskin has done really well, but he can't play every single minute. So I don't think there's any reason that Rice shouldn't be seeing more minutes at first team level.
Yeah. Christian Webster, incidentally, the son of Andy Webster, just to make those of you feel old, including me. He's a captain of the B team last night. How did he get on, Joshua? Because he's highly rated centre-half.
Yeah, again, difficult to judge because he was playing it up against Zach Rudden, who is of Rangers B team fame because he scored tons of goals. So he did well up until, in particular, that 35-minute mark. Queens hadn't really had an opportunity until then. And he was playing alongside Clinton and Ciala at the back. So there wasn't really anyone. I think that, again, when the game was 11 against 11, I thought Rangers were the better team. Cole McKinnon playing in that. We've not seen him playing that central midfield position in the first team, and his input in the first team and input in first team squads, matchday squads, hasn't been as consistent over maybe the last couple of months compared to at the start of the year when he was quite a regular feature in Clement's squad. He obviously came on away at Benfica, didn't he? But I think that was in kind of a right wing position. So he did well to get his goal. Curtis and Stevens. Curtis probably the standout on that left-hand side, although again his influence wanes somewhat when it goes 10 against 11. Paul and Seal did well for the goal. Was taken off a little bit into the second half, and Robbie Fraser up. What you notice, I think, about Robbie Fraser is he does definitely have the legs to compete. I think in making that step up to men's football. If you're Robbie Fraser, though, with Ridvan now coming back, with Cortez about to come back, with Matondo about to come back, you're maybe looking at this season thinking, has my opportunity to get that chance this season gone? Yeah, because and Chefty's younger than him and is at a later stage of his development, and he's a better player. So it's not always. I don't think you can always criticise like Clement in that situation because he is playing a young left back who's playing really well. But yeah, Fraser unlucky as well last night to not get people seeing the highlights of goal that would have been a fantastic curler had it gone into the back of the net to hit the post.
Yeah, I'd be certainly seeking a move in January if I'm Robbie Fraser. A loan move to just head out and play regular games. I don't think there's any use for him just being in the B team, playing now and again, these sort of ad hoc games and watching from the sidelines. He certainly has to go out to aid his development and start playing consistent football for me. Right, let's move on to the first team this evening. So interestingly, we were on the press conference reaction video last night, Joshua. Of course, there is the embargoed sections. Yanis Hadji speaking about the influence James Tavernier had on him during that spell where he was out of the squad, out of the picture. Go and watch it. It's on the YouTube channel, folks. And Phil Clement also speaking heavily on John Souttar, and says he's best defender at the club in terms of his development. He's been very pleased with how he has come on under his tenure, and he also Chris posed him on a question about his contract situation and whether talks have opened with regards to that. Clement says it's on the table and it's progressed when things are arranged. So that's not the case yet. So we'll see what's going to happen in the next couple of months. He still has more than 1 year and a half to go, but he knows that I'm happy with the evolution he made, and it shows also in his play. So an offer on the table for John Souttar, Joshua. Probably a wise move. Hopefully they can come to some sort of agreement and tie him down. I think he has been standout player, one of the standout players for Rangers this season. Haven't been many, it's fair to say, and he has been prone to a mistake or two, but I think I've been pretty satisfied with how he's performed this season. Yeah,
and it feels like there's been fewer mistakes. He had that one against Hearts that Jack Butland had to cover that back pass and maybe a bit susceptible for the goal away at Kilmarnock. But generally, I agree. I think he's been one of Rangers, definitely got a shout for their most consistent player in the Premiership this season. It's been a long time coming. And again, it's probably an occasion where you do need to give the people credit who signed Souttar and said, we think we can get beyond these injury issues, because at that time that did not seem at all likely, and he was injured on his debut. I think he maybe played through an injury on his debut. And I actually remember Connor Goldson coming out, and I don't know if you remember this, a few months into Souttar's Rangers career when he was struggling. He'd faced quite a lot of criticism. He was injured, And Goldson was pretty defiant in his response, saying that I know what it's like to take a bit of time to settle here. No doubt that he will go on and be a really important player for the club, and this season so far that's kind of proven to be the case. And it makes sense, Rangers want to sell players far more regularly than they have in recent years, and they need to be aggressive with that. It's players like Chefty and others, Hamza Gaman obviously more at the start of that curve, but they need to become a player trading club. They need to sell players regularly. You also need consistent people there who understand the club, can play week in, week out, homegrown, which gives you the obvious benefit as well.
Yeah.
Rangers have a bit of an issue, I think, at centre-back in December, where they're in an injury away from an issue, because Proper, he was, if you watch the game back, he was limping a bit in that first half. Clement obviously speaking about the fact they had to come off with a knock, but he's come off on 3 or 4 occasions so far. And you're looking at those games against Tottenham and Celtic and thinking you want Balogun in there behind Proper and Balogun. Balogun's 36 years old. Again, as we've discussed earlier in the week, Derek, the type of game he wants to play, which is aggressive, relies on a lot of running, he can't play every single game in December. So if you're Leon King or Clinton Nsiala, I don't think you should be far away from the conversation, because Rangers need depth in there. We've not seen King play at centre-back in a long time, apart from the end of last season when the league was gone. John Souttar is going to play week in, week out. He's shown an ability to play every 3 days. But the question is, who's going to be consistent alongside him. I think it will be a rotation of Proper and Balogun, and then King and Nsiala also probably have to come into the question because of that injury to Casemiro.
Yeah, I think the Fraser-Burr game, when is that? January time? Yeah, I would like to see several B-team fringe players getting an opportunity, young lads. I think Rangers, the B-team should be good enough to get the measure of Fraser-Burr, but no doubt they will play an experienced side. But yeah, I think that would give Philip Clement a great opportunity to bleed some of those young players and see what they are all about. Let's get to a couple of comments that are coming in before we look at who will likely start tonight at Ibrox. You can't do that with an interesting point. This was touched on by the player himself. Was it last week or the week before? I can't quite remember. He says, Derek, do you think Czerny will be available, affordable to buy at some point? He's one of our best right now. He certainly is one of Rangers' best. He looks the more likely from any of the front players at this moment in time to get a goal. And he's certainly coming on to a game ever since that glaring miss against Lyon. He's been absolutely fantastic, really, in the main. And he was quizzed on this in a press conference recently. He says he's not focusing on that just now. A proper loan player's answer whenever they're quizzed on whether they would like to join their loan club on a permanent basis. If you remember, Abdallah Sima was a man that was quizzed pretty much every press conference last season about that. It never happened. There is no option or obligation to buy with Václav Černy's loan. I think it would cost quite a considerable amount of money if Rangers want to make that move permanent, Joshua. Now, if a deal can be agreed and it is one that suits the club's financial model and Czerny is happy with that, I don't want him to break the bank for him, but I wouldn't be opposed to seeing him sign at Rangers permanently. It's whether the player would fancy it as well, I guess.
Yeah, he's 20. Is he 26 now, Czerny? So I think that would come into the question as well, where you wouldn't want to spend tons of money on a player who won't have loads of resale value. But part of the reason that Rangers moved for him, 26, and part of the reason Rangers 27. Moved for him was 20. Is he 27?
Okay, 27 last month. Yeah.
So you're not going to shell out tons of money, I think, for a player who is a winger at that age. Sima obviously was 22, 23, so it's a bit of a different discussion. But with Czerny was available, part of the reason Rangers moved from, he was available on a loan deal early in the window. Often what you see with players, I think Casemiro maybe came into this a bit as well, is that loan signings only become available more regularly towards the end of the transfer window when pictures are more clear and clubs maybe have players in for certain positions. Czerny's year at Wolfsburg didn't really work. He did move for quite a lot of money. I can't remember the exact tally, but he came off the back of
8 million, I think.
Yeah, it was a fair amount, and it was off the back of a year in the Eredivisie where I believe he was third for goal involvement, goals and assists for FC20, and very highly rated. Having been a player who was really highly rated coming through, but had a couple of bad injuries and took going to 20 and a few consistent years there to find his form. I think what you've seen with him, so on the topic of will he stay at, probably unlikely unless there could be some sort of middle ground found, because he's also under contract at Wolfsburg, I believe, until 2027. So they still have 2 years to bargain with by the time his loan deal is up at the end of the campaign. Two things is, one, he's shown an ability, and this is something that we did a piece speaking with his ex-manager at 20, who said that he can be an emotional player, and he needs to know that he's basically got his fans on side and he's got the manager on side. And you've seen that in his press conferences. You saw that when he reacted angrily after he came off against Hibs. But people will accept that type of thing, Derek, if you then don't go and hide, if you then go and take responsibility, which Cherney does. And we've also seen, I think, a little bit of the evolution of him as a player. He's not a touchline hugging winger who you want to isolate out wide all the time. You want him moving into the centre. You want him to, I think, combine with players as well. That combination play with Danilo is something that, if he starts tonight, and we obviously saw it for the goal against Dundee United, that's what I think Cherney needs, and that should bring out better performances from him as well, because he doesn't have that dynamic with Dessers, and because he is someone who'd probably rather play a 1-2 and is clearly an intelligent footballer, as opposed to maybe taking the ball on his own and dribbling beyond players at all time. That relationship with Danilo, I think, can be pretty effective. At points, does he shoot too much? Yes. However, I think he's probably a player who's he's a good enough finisher to merit that in relation to Scottish football, and he's overperformed his XG quite significantly. So I don't have a huge issue with that, although I do think over the course that Rangers are sometimes a bit scrappy in and around the box and choose to take too many long shots. I think Cherney's the only Rangers player who scored from outside the box. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, this season. It's not a pattern that maybe Bayrami, if he was getting into better positions, you could apply that to him, but it's not a pattern across the board. So Cherney can shoot it from outside the box, but I think the rest of the team should play that extra pass into a better position for me.
Yeah. Right, tonight then is a given to start, of course. The starting lineup for Rangers this evening. Do you see many alterations to the team that won narrowly against St Johnstone at the weekend? I know you've got Robin Proper out for Leon Balogun there. You've got Ridvan coming in, Joshua, and Igaman on the left.
Explain yourself. Right, okay. So I think first and foremost, Ridvan to come in because just give Chefty a bit of a rest, and you need to get Ridvan up to match sharpness. Balogun to come in because the tight up against Vassell, I thought the Proper struggled against him away at Rugby Park, and Balogun should be a little bit fresher because he didn't play as much football last week. Dujon Sterling, believe there's not a worry at the moment that he won't be involved next week against Spurs and Celtic, but probably makes sense to not risk him tonight with those big games coming up and bleed them back into the team away at Ross County. Cherney is the obvious. Aside from that, Hadji has to start. Now, Rangers do deviate between like a 4-3-3 and a 4-2-3-1. If you look at where Hadji is playing at the weekend, he is kind of playing off the left-hand side, and I thought alongside Bayrami, they kind of got in one another's way quite a lot because they were trying to occupy the same position. Raskin definitely starts at the base midfield. I'd quite like to see Diomande and Raskin together this season. We've not really seen that. They're more different in profile compared to Raskin and Barron. Barron's done really well, so it's probably harsh to drop him out of that team, but you need to rotate going into December. And I think Diomande alongside Cherney and Tavernier could work quite nicely because it gives you a little bit of a different profile, and he's a better number 8 than I think he is a number 10. And then Hamza Igaman on the left. I just don't see why not at this stage, Derek, because you've got 3 strikers. I think Rangers have struggled. I think Bayrami, listen, he could come in tonight and play a really good game from the left. But what Clement wants across his front 3 is a player who runs in behind. And I think that's why he's chosen Dessers quite a lot, because he likes someone who stretches the play. Danilo wants to come to feet more to get the ball. Hamza Igaman, you could say, is the same. But when we've seen him off the left, I think he's been relatively effective as well. He quite likes to drift out there. He's a player who can carry the ball and chop inside. I just think when you're going to have that much of the ball at Ibrox tonight, it could make you a little bit more unpredictable. And then you've still got a striker to bring off the bench. You've got Bayrami to keep a little bit fresh, maybe give him half an hour at the number 10 position as well. Ross McCausland maybe for Václav Cherney, who's played a lot of football, because you need to keep players fresh for next week. So that is, you can tell me where I'm wrong, but that is my. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'd quite like to see that tonight.
Yeah, I'm getting a few comments saying where's Barron, no Bayrami. I get your point. Bayrami has been off the boil. I still want to see him in that number 10 role, but
I agree.
I want to see Yanis Hadji in there as well. And of course, Philip Clement doesn't deviate from the formation and the style that he wants to play. So I think, yep, I can see that happening. Danilo certainly, Cyril Dessers is not the man for me, although I can see him starting at Ibrox. But yeah, Danilo for me starts all day long. And certainly the Diamande Raskin partnership is one we haven't seen. Whether we see it tonight, who knows? But I certainly think against Kilmarnock, you don't necessarily need a Raskin-Barron partnership. Barron has played a huge amount of games, more games than I thought he would have played when he signed in the summer. He's been fantastic for me in the main, but like you say, Joshua, some big games coming up on the horizon. Can if Rangers afford just to give him a little breather tonight? Who knows? We'll soon find out when the teams drop about 6:45 this evening. But yeah, Ridvan back in contention is certainly a bonus. Touch wood that he can steer clear of fitness. How many times have we said that? Countless.
Yeah.
But
he needs rotated. I think it's clear by this point, Derek, that he can't. He got injured at the start of the season again when he played so much football. And Chefty has been. I think he's been the signing of the summer. I know people, a lot of people disagree with that. I just think for his age, for what the type of player he could become. But if you're playing Hamza and Egeman alongside Ridvan, then Ridvan's a player who's more comfortable moving inside as well. If you've got one criticism of Chefty is that he does often want to go on the outside. And I think with Bayrami and Chefty, that can be a bit predictable. And you saw that at the weekend against St Johnstone, where they know that Bayrami always wants to move inside and Chefty always wants to move on the outside. The brief sightings of Ridvan and Cortez, what I thought was good about that was that both players were happy going in either direction. And again, that just makes Rangers a bit predictable in a way we've not seen in recent weeks. And you need to give him some minutes at some point. So, and Diomande, we've spoken about it. We'll speak about it more, but he's a player who's not really kicked on this season yet. I'd like to see him alongside Nico Raskin. Connor Barron, I agree, he's been really good, really good, especially considering players are coming for a lot more money than him this summer and not made the impact that he has. I just think you want to rotate him a little bit. You want to try those two players together as well. And Hadji, I don't think you can drop him on the basis of his impact that he had on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, I just hope more than anything tonight that the fans turning up are entertained. It's about time that a Rangers performance that we were enthused about. Too often it's been turgid, as we all know. So tonight's the night that's going to change. I'm sure Rangers are going to blow away Kilmarnock with a swashbuckling display. Let's hope so anyway. We'll have all the usual coverage as ever, folks. And before we go, good friend of the show, Adam, gets in touch. He's crediting your festive decorations, Joshua. He says, "Oh, what a lovely festive background, Josh. Hopefully means we get 3 points tonight." So
wow.
He's tried his hand at comedy as well, Adam. Don't give up your day job, buddy. But there you go. So
you'll have found that funny though, Derek, which is the main. And he'll have been excited for the whole 33 minutes because he'll have known you'll have brought it up again. So you've made this morning. Yeah,
absolutely. Right, good stuff. We'll have all the usual content for you tonight, folks, from Ibrox. Wrap up warm. I'd imagine it's going to be a chilly one. And let's hope we get 3 points and a very good performance as well. If we don't speak to you later, enjoy your Wednesday, and we'll speak to you a little later on. Bye for now.